Hi, so we're just going to get started. We've got our next presentation. Our next presentation is from Ross. Ross is the co-founder of a Cornish charity called Man Down. His charity work with mental health and well-being for men across the county of Cornwall. They do group work and one-to-one work across the whole county, and there is a particular focus as well on suicide prevention, but I'll let Ross tell you the rest. So,
thank you.
Here, Ross.
Thank you. I'll take my mask off. Is that the clicker?
Yeah, get right.
Click right. Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how good I'm going to be stood here still talking. I might have to walk around, but so thank you to Linda and Anna for inviting me along this morning to speak with you all. I'm very honoured. It's going to be a little bit of a different talk than what you're used to, I can imagine. Very, very interesting to hear Felice's talk this morning around ADHD and bacteria and gut and well-being and mental health. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my story and my journey with my own mental health, and then I'm going to go on to talking about what we do within our wonderful organisation Man Down here in Cornwall, and then I'm also going to finish off a little bit talking about Blue Balls, which is a cold water swimming group which we've also founded, and then I'm going to, if you've got any questions you'd like me to answer, we'll do like a little Q&A for around about 10 minutes. Okay? So, I grew up in Plymouth, on quite a large council estate. I was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 13. So, listening to that earlier on was, very, very interesting. I was very impulsive. I was very forgetful. I wasn't very academic. Wasn't very studious because I couldn't keep still in class long enough to listen and to take the information in, and I'm still like that today. I was expelled from 2 secondary schools. I ended up in a behavioural school at the age of 15, and my school days were fairly traumatic, to be fair. So I suffered massively with anxiety. I was diagnosed with dyslexia. I suffer with imposter syndrome, which basically means that I've already made my mind up that you all think I'm a bit of a failure, and I shouldn't be here talking to you today. But that doesn't stop me from standing up and speaking in front of people, and it certainly won't in the future either. So like I said, ended up in a behavioural school at the age of 15. I left school at 15 years old with hardly any qualifications, and decided that I needed to obviously try and do some further education. So I went to college, and that didn't last very long. So I started getting into the wrong crowd, mixing around with the wrong people, started experimenting with drugs and alcohol, and found that drugs worked for me, shutting off my mind, slowing down my thoughts, and I used that as a negative coping mechanism until I was 33 years old. So I decided that I needed to go away and get away from Plymouth and get away from the people that I was mixing with and the environment that I'd put myself into. So I went away and joined the army. I joined the parachute regiment at 18 and lasted 6 weeks. And I can safely say that it wasn't for me. But it did taught me a lot about myself. Taught me a lot about that I needed to be held accountable, and I needed to take responsibility of my life and my actions. So I came out of the army, moved to Cornwall. I was working for a friend who'd just opened up a hair salon in Truro. And sorry, I forgot to mention I was a hairdresser previous, so hairdressing, army, there's a connection somewhere. I'll let you figure that out. So I moved to Cornwall when I was 19. I met my wife. 3 months later, and we decided to open up our own salon in Falmouth, which was in 2005. So I was 22 years old, and I wasn't really experiencing sort of poor mental health at that stage because I didn't really know how bad I was. I just thought I was, you know, a young lad or a young man, living life sort of fairly on the edge. I was still abusing alcohol and drugs. And the stress of running a business and having staff just basically sort of took over my life and led me to a very dark and scary place. So as I continued in my late 20s, the alcohol abuse became worse, so did the drug taking, and I definitely developed a destructive relationship with alcohol and cocaine. So I think I was 28 years old, and I was really suffering with my mental health. I was having suicidal thoughts. I was very, very anxious. My mind just doesn't switch off, you know, it's part of my ADHD, or it was ADD back when I was diagnosed. And before I sort of understood, you know, what was going on with me and why it was happening, these thoughts were very negative a lot of the time. And now I can sort of see it as a little bit of a superpower because I can hyper-focus in on things and I can concentrate without any noise around me. I can just zone in on something and get it done. But I didn't realise that back then. I just thought that, you know, this was going to be the way I was all the time, forever, and I didn't really want that to sort of continue. So I was out one evening and I ended up getting in trouble with the police. I got arrested for GBH and ABH. I attacked 2 guys right out of the blue, completely out of character, but it was just obviously everything had just caught up with me and it was just an explosion like a volcano, you know, all my trauma and everything all just came out. So I was looking at a custodial sentence, I was looking at a prison sentence. My wife at the time was pregnant with our first child, Rudy. It was all very EastEnders. It was just, you know, it wasn't looking very good. So I escaped the prison sentence. I got a suspended prison sentence and I was electronically tagged for 3 months, which was great fun, trying to tell my clients that it was a mileometer, which I had on my leg. Some of them believed me, some of them didn't. And it was a turning point for me. I was at a crossroads. So I decided to throw myself into understanding why I was feeling the way I was. I wanted to give myself as much knowledge and information as possible to try and tackle what was going on in here. But with all the social stigma and the shame which is attached to men's mental health, which is why suicide rates are so high amongst men, 75% of all suicides are male. I just gave myself the time and the understanding. So I was on a better path, you know, and I did my level 2 counselling skills, I did my mental health first aid, I did my suicide prevention training, and I just really found something which I was engaged with, which I could really sort of take hold of and have some passion and meaning and purpose. So it wasn't until I was cutting one of my clients' hair and we were talking about, you know, mental health, because I've always been very open about my stuff, you know, because I can talk about it and I can move on. It doesn't, you know, you can't catch poor mental health, you know, it's not something which you can catch. So it's never been a problem for me. I've always been very open and talked about it because I feel that it's, you know, it releases a lot of that tension and build up inside you, which we'll come on to in a minute when we talk about what we do with Man Down. So I was talking to a client and we were just, having a conversation, and there was a couple of local suicides to the Falmouth area where my salon is, and I knew one of the guys indirectly, and it just, whenever I heard about someone taking their own life, it just really had quite a negative effect on me. Sorry. So we just, we were talking and about why this was happening, Sorry. So yeah, we were just talking about how important it was for guys to talk about their stuff, and not enough men talk because of the shame and the stigma which is attached to men's mental health. Come on, pull yourself together, Christ. So I don't normally do these talks, by the way. Brad does. I'm normally the one that's just sat down, sort of. So we were talking, and my client's husband, who's Brad, who's the other co-founder of Man Down, has worked with some charities in the past. He's worked with Turn to Starboard, and so he was the sort of, he was the brains behind where we are today. I was sort of like the engine behind it and the ideas man, and he's the one that's been able to turn Man Down into what it is now. So we got chatting, and we decided that we wanted to provide somewhere where men can come and talk about their problems, their concerns, their mental health, because most guys, they don't know what they're going through. They don't really fully understand what they're experiencing. They're labelled with depression, they're labelled with anxiety, they're labelled with PTSD, they're labelled with, all these disorders, but they don't really understand what it is that they need to do to be able to help them recover and move forward in life. Because they don't talk, That's just one of the reasons. It's not the main reason, but that was what we came to. That was the. So we started our first group in Penryn in 2018 in October, and we had 9 guys show up, and we were sat there with these guys, and we didn't really sort of have much sort of context to how the evening was going to go. We just thought we were just going to chat, and I was going to tell my story, and in turn people were going to sort of try and relate with it, and that's what happened. It was something really, really sort of magical. I'll never forget that evening, because the guys that turned up were just very, very nervous, very, very anxious, very, very ashamed, and the shame, you could see it on them. It was just a heavy, heavy load. And by the end of the evening, we'd normalised, what they were experiencing. We were talking about suicide like it was just part of a conversation. And we went away and said, look, this is something really powerful that we've created here. So, and then, the rest is history, really. That was 2018. So now we've got over 750 members across Cornwall, and we are eradicating the stigma and the shame which is attached to men's mental health here in Cornwall. Cornwall has the 3rd largest suicide rate in the country. For reasons, I'll let you decide. So that's me in a small nutshell, and I'm just going to go through. I've got a slide here which was created actually for the mental health conference which we went to in 2019. So it's a little bit outdated, but it's just going to give you a little bit of an idea of what we do and how we do it. So the right one, yeah?
I think so. I'll find out.
Oh, here we go. So, Man Down. So the logo was actually created by a friend of mine called Sam, And we spent quite a while sort of running through what we were gonna call it and what we, you know, how we were gonna brand it. And we wanted something really sort of eye-catching, nothing too sort of soft. We wanted something quite, you know, quite impact, you know, to have a bit of an impact. And we feel that, you know, we've sort of really come up with something which is people engage with, and especially men, you know. And the bright yellow colours with the black works really well. So that's me on the left, and that's Brad on the right. Like I said, Brad's on a sabbatical at the minute because his wife is recovering from cancer. And Brad's a wonderful guy. It's a really sad story actually, because he retired to Cornwall with his wife 5 years ago, and you know, 4 years later she was diagnosed with cancer, and it's spread everywhere. You know, tumours, spine. It's very, 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 very sad. So suicide. So our main objective for Man Down is to prevent suicides, to prevent male suicides in Cornwall. 84 men a week. This isn't in Cornwall, by the way. This is in the UK. So 84 men a week take their own lives. 336 people, men a month. 4,368 a year, which is just very, just awful. You know, very, very sad. So why do we exist? So, like I said, number one, to reduce suicides in Cornwall, male suicides. There's a couple of organisations that specifically work with women. So you've got Your Voice, and you've also got a fairly new organisation called Georgia's Voice, which is founded by a very good friend of mine, Sophie. She lost her daughter to suicide as a result of the pandemic. She was only 19 and she took her own life, actually in the family home. And Sophie's just used all of her passion and energy and everything that she's got to sort of put into this charity, and she's doing fantastic things. And she works with young girls aged between 18 and 21. And she's based in Falmouth, and she has actually just opened up a little boutique shop in Falmouth, actually, a little charity shop. Number two, to end the stigma. So social stigma. Stigma is attached to, you know, society. It's what we all put on a stamp on something, and the shame is something which we feel personally. You know, it's when we feel our whole worth. We just feel worthless. You know. And number three, to improve well-being. You know, we want to improve the well-being of our members that come along. You know, they come along to the group. We all sit in a circle. Pre-COVID, we were passing a ball around and it had talk to me on it. And each guy gets 10 minutes to, not timed, but you know, we want an opportunity. We want everyone to get an opportunity to talk in the group. We didn't have that to start with, and you know, some people would talk for an hour, and you wouldn't get, generally me, and you wouldn't, you know, get the quieter guys in the room that had obviously plucked up the courage to come along. So I've been outside. I used to wait outside because I used to see people come to the door and then walk away and sit in the cars and drive away. And you know, to build up the courage and you know, to come along to the meeting in the first place is just it's phenomenal. It's amazing. It still makes me feel so incredibly proud each meeting. You know, how many people come along, how many new guys coming along to the meetings, and they get 10 minutes to talk about their stuff, and we have a facilitator per group. In the bigger groups we have like a co-facilitator, and you know, they make drinks, they facilitate the meeting, they make people feel comfortable, and they give everyone an opportunity to talk. So 10 minutes isn't a long time, but you know, it's enough to tell their story, to let us all know what they're going through, what they're experiencing. Some of them, it's the first time they've ever talked in front of people. You know, they've not talked to their GP, they've not talked to their wife, they've not talked to their mum, their sister, their auntie, their sister. You know, it's it's the first time that they've ever talked. And you know, to see them from when they first come into the meeting to when they leave, it is literally like someone's just picked a great big weight off their back. And we know, you know, we explain to the guys that, you know, we're not offering a cure, because, you know, we all know there is no cure to mental illness. It's learning to live alongside it in a comfortable manner. But to use these tools that we're all providing, talking is one tool that you should have in your toolbox. You should feel comfortable talking about your stuff rather than internalising it and pushing everything down, pushing all the feelings, which men do. You know, women are generally better at talking with each other, more social, which doesn't mean that you're still not going through what we are. We're all going through the same stuff, but for men, it's more embarrassing, it's more shameful, it's more stigmatised, because, you know, men are supposed to be this sort of macho figure and provide for the family. Not so much anymore, but, you know, that's the way cultures have been. And that's just the way men think. Not so much with the younger generation. You know, we get younger guys that are coming along to the meeting, and we can see that their mindset has changed slightly, which is great. But, you know, our average age of our members is between sort of 30 and 40. So they're still very, you know, sort of stuck in that sort of 90s mindset culture. And what we also do is we offer social events. So we get them involved with surfing, we get them involved with yoga. We send them off to therapy if they're hard, you know, having financial trouble. We assess, obviously, the individuals and obviously the complexity of their mental health, and we're sort of obviously if we get someone that comes to the meeting, which we haven't had yet, but is in sort of crisis point, or that is, you know, suffering from, you know, more complex conditions like schizophrenia and other issues like that, then you know, we've got a procedure that we follow, and we put them onto, you know, high levels of help. So yes, peer-to-peer support, you know, hearing other people's problems, issues, concerns. Someone might be talking about, you know, how they felt really depressed recently, and you know, they've been having suicidal thoughts, and someone might be sat next to them and saying that, you know, I'm going through exactly the same thing, you know, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm managing it, and it's just, you know, they all sort of bounce off each other. If you would have told me, you know, sort of, you know, a couple of years ago, let's sit a load of men that are suffering with their mental health in a room together, I would have thought that was a really, really bad idea, but it's not. It's very, very powerful. So, like I said, this is a couple of years old now. So we are actually in. So we're in Truro, Redroof, Penzance, St Ives, Perranporth, St Austell, Launceston, Weybridge, Newquay. Come on, help me out. St Austell, St Stephen, Lou. We will be in Lou. Yeah, no, we are in Lou. Sorry, should know that. Liskeard, Saltash, Helston. I've said Redroof, Penzance, Newham. We were in St Agnes, but we've amalgamated the two into Perranporth. We want to be in every town across Cornwall. There's 30 locations that we want to be in, and I know we're in 21 at the minute. So that's my driving force behind it, is to get into these little towns, getting into these little villages. You know, if we could just say, look, we're going to have one meeting in Truro every 2 weeks and we expect everyone to come, well, that's not going to happen. You know, we want to sort of draw these guys out of these little towns where it's quite, you know, toxic masculinity, these little fishing villages like Padstow, and places where it's sort of, you know, if you talk about your feelings, then, you know, you're not a man, you know. And it's just normalising it, you know, and you know, things are changing for the better, which is great. The hardest part for us is finding the facilitators, because what we do is we find a guy that comes to the group, and we turn the members into facilitators. You know, they've got some sort of incentive, and it gives them a bit of purpose, a bit of meaning, and you know, they have just become such strong, knowledgeable gentlemen that are running these groups. And you know, I remember them first coming along to the meetings, you know, the shell of what they are now. You know, very insecure, high levels of anxiety and depression, PTSD, you know, with a victim mindset. Because, you know, having a positive mindset is something which you can have along suffering with your mental health. That's something which I had to find out the hard way. I was a victim, you know, I was a victim of circumstance. I had a victim mindset. Everything was everyone else's fault. It wasn't my fault. I wasn't taking accountability or being held responsible for my actions. I was using my mental health as an excuse. You know, I've got, you know, anxiety. You know, I've got ADHD. You know, I can't keep still. I can't concentrate. I can't, you know, can't do this, can't do that. The more you tell yourself that, obviously, the worse it gets. So I made it, you know, an essential part of my life to try and develop a more of a growth mindset. And that's what we try and do for these guys. You know, we try and give them as much information. We make sure that they've all got their mental health first aid training. We make sure they've all got their assist suicide prevention training. So they're well equipped for dealing with, you know, these scenarios that they come across. We provide supervision counselling for them all as well, so they're not taking home all the stuff that they're listening to, which happened to me to start with. You know, I think it was just because it made me aware of how much people were actually suffering, and what people were actually going through. Sorry.
Can I just say 4 minutes left?
Yeah, okay, perfect. What for questions and answers as well? Oh, right, okay. So we're everywhere, and we're going to be everywhere. How does it work? Peer group support, I've explained all that. Very informal, very non-judgmental. That's an essential part of what we do. It's completely non-judgmental, and everything that we talk about is completely confidential, unless it's a safeguarding issue, unless we have to, you know, share that information, or if they're obviously a danger to themselves or other people.
Hi guys,
I'm not going to have time for all that, unfortunately. That was just one of our case studies, and that's it on Man Down. And a little bit about Blue Balls. We're a cold water swimming group which me and a friend of mine, Tom, started at the beginning of the pandemic, and we encourage men to come cold water swimming because it has huge benefits on their well-being and their mental health. Releases, you know, some fantastic hormones and stress hormones, and allows you to deal with, you know, your anxiety a little bit better. I've talked. Have we got any questions?
So how would one become a facilitator? How would you go about that? I mean, I work in A&E. I see a broad spectrum of folks coming through the doors, young and old, with mental health issues. And, you know, I come from a background, yeah, not too dissimilar to yourself in some respects, but I attended one of the meetings where, you know, really was like, it was really good to listen to people opening up and talking. And I thought, yeah, you know, it would be something that I'd be interested in. I'll probably speak to you personally rather than now. But yeah, I'd like to speak to you about.
Perfect. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, sorry.
Thanks very much for talking, Ross.
That's all right.
Really inspirational. I just wanted to sort of congratulate you and this organisation on like a triumph of branding, because I think there's so much, you know, it's good and it's bad. You know, the baby blues and the, you know, for colour scheme and the beautiful woman sat on the beach meditating and the picture of an avocado. It's all good and well, but actually men don't respond to that very much.
No.
Particularly the men that are struggling with their mental health. And I think there's so much that we can learn from actually getting your foot in the door
Yeah.
appropriately to like the bit of the thought process that went into sort of how well even your font looks and everything.
Yeah.
You can connect with men that read it.
We just wanted it quite rustic, quite raw, quite real, nothing too sort of, you know, flowery or soft, and just something that people engage with. And the whole man down thing with no face is because most men lose their identity when they're going through, you know, a sort of poor mental health episode. They feel like they're not. They feel like they're not a man, basically, you know, because they're not providing the support to their family or their friends, or you know, they've lost their identity, and yeah, that was the whole sort of thought process behind the branding. We wanted it just to be sort of quite, you know, eye-catching, and I think the beard bit, hey, yeah. The beard bit was, you know, we wanted to sort of keep it quite masculine. Not that if you don't have a beard, you're not masculine. yeah. This pulls off as Velcro. Yeah.
Ross, thank you so much. That was a really powerful delivery there.
Thank you.
Your average demographic is 7 to 40.
Yeah.
But you've got this kind of new wave of younger generation coming in.
Yeah.
Different mindset. I just wonder, so a lot of my work's in schools and youth.
Right. Okay.
Do you do an education work in schools? Because you think of what Ellie said about pre-14,
Yeah.
diet, mental health,
Absolutely.
talking with movement as well.
Yeah.
How powerful that could be if we link all them together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we want to get involved with. Our main focus for now, or you know, is to get those locations up and running with the facilitators, and then I'm definitely very passionate about going into schools and talking, you know, not just to boys, but to boys and girls, you know, and just make them realise that they have got a choice, and you know, it's just giving them the understanding and the knowledge, you know, to move forward with that, and it doesn't mean that it's the end of your existence when you're labelled with something, you know, when you're labelled with depression or anxiety or ADHD, you know, that's the start of your journey, you know, and just, you know, just try and keep them away from creating self-destructive behaviour patterns, you know, that's what happened to me.
Do you support people which have lost people? Because I know somebody who is a parent of
Yeah.
somebody who has lost somebody through suicide, which sometimes suffers with mental health and gets suicidal themselves.
Yeah.
Do you support that? Or?
Yeah, I mean, the groups are open to anyone. So, you know, we have dads coming along that have recently lost their sons and stuff to suicide, and brothers, and, you know, uncles, and so yeah, we support anyone. And you know, once they're in the door, then that's the pathway. We can sort of put them on to, you know, to other organisations and other charities that if we can't provide that support, then we'll definitely be able to do that for them. Yeah.
You run a fantastic organisation. So I'm a GP. I've got someone in the room who I would love for them to end up in your room.
Yeah.
You know, we'll say here are the contact details, but obviously it's their decision, it's their first step. Is there any advice you could give us that makes it more likely that they end up with you?
That's a really good question, actually. Yeah. I mean, yeah, they have a choice, and you know, if they want to live alongside their poor mental health, then they need to make that first step. It's a choice that they've got to make, and we can just make life a lot easier for them. It doesn't have to be so hard. I think that's probably what I would say if I was in the room with them. And it is really difficult. It is, because it is a mindset, isn't it? You know, I think if they come to you expecting you to give them all the answers, and you're just so overworked, and we know this, you know, and it's, you know, they whether they want to just take antidepressants and just think that that's going to be a magic cure, you know, we all know that doesn't happen. You know, it needs to be worked alongside. It's another tool that you need in your toolbox, you know, medication, support network, exercise, right diet, all these, you know, we ask these questions when they come to the group. Are you getting any exercise? Doesn't have to be crazy going smashing the gym for 3 hours a day. It's just moderate exercise. Are you exercising 3 times a week? No. Are you drinking lots of alcohol? Are you abusing alcohol and drugs? Yeah. You know, what's your diet like? You know, what's your sleep like? You know, these are just the fundamental things that you need to get in place. And it's a choice, you know. It's a choice that I had to make. So yeah.
One more question. I'm just
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
That's right. Everyone wants to ask so many questions. You're brilliant.
Go
Are
on.
you planning on expanding where you work into Plymouth or Devon?
Over the bridge. Well, yeah, I mean, we'd like to. I mean, Plymouth's my hometown, you know, that's where I grew up. And, you know, it's a massive sort of working man's city, a lot of poverty, a lot of deprivation. But yeah, we would. We just want to crack Cornwall because, you know, Cornwall's where our passion is, and with it being third largest suicide rate in the country, we want to try and reduce that significantly, which we are doing. I know we are. You know, we've got 750 men that come to the meetings across Cornwall since we started, and we've not had one guy yet who we've lost. So yeah, thank you. Thank you. All right, thanks. Thank you.